Guten Tag, WAP. This is Mr. Linegar. Let's make history today as we go over Unit 0, Day 3. We're going to talk about ancient China and some of the religions and philosophies in China before the post-classical period. So before we get started, let's do our daily punishment. So, what did the grape say when it got crushed? Nothing. It just let out a little whine. Whine. I thought that was clever. All right, your key terms for today are dynastic cycle, mandate of heaven, the Confucian bureaucracy, Confucius, the Analects, Ren, Li, Xiao, Junzi, the five relationships, Taoism, Wu Wei, Lao Tse, Legalism, the scholar gentry, the Qin dynasty, the Q is pronounced like a ch in Chinese, the Han dynasty, and the Tang dynasty. We're going to go over the Chinese political and economic history before 1200 CE, and the major ideologies, which is like religions, philosophies, in China before 1200 CE. So the Chinese civilizations existed well before 600 BCE. The first one was like 2000 BCE. That was the Xia dynasty. The Chinese dynasties are going to go through a cycle called the dynastic cycle. The dynasty starts off strong, bad things happen, there's natural disasters, the government becomes corrupt, there's civil wars, and then a new dynasty takes their place. I'll show you an image of what the dynastic cycle looks like in a second. But it's like a concept they created, the Chinese created, to explain the rise and fall of their dynasties. The civilizations in China were often very patriarchal. Women were not respected. Women were considered lower than the new wife was considered lower than the children in the family household. A lot of times the little girls would not be given even names. They'd be like daughter 1, daughter 2. The Chinese will later invent something called foot binding. And even early on, they did female infanticide. The Chinese will trade on the Silk Road, which is the large Eurasian trade route that goes all the way from Asia to Europe. It's not like a road made out of silk. It's a dirt path that eventually a lot of merchants would use to take their goods from Asia and spread them to the Middle East and get to the Middle East, from Asia to China on the north. The east side, eventually getting to the Middle East. The Chinese will be advanced in technology. They'll create luxury goods, paper, silk, porcelain. They will create a governmental system called the Confucian bureaucracy. In order to get a job in the government, you have to go do a schooling system and take a test. And the way you get a job is you actually have to pass the test. This is called meritocracy. You get the job based on your merit. This sounds kind of obvious, but before this time period, kings would just appoint their friends or their family members in governmental positions, which will still happen to some extent in China, but not as much. So you might appoint your friend to be a tax collector, but they might not know any math. So they probably won't be very good in the job. The Chinese created the idea of the Confucian bureaucracy, which is going to make their government more effective. Some of the first dynasties in China were the Qin dynasty. It was the first Chinese empire created by Qin Shi Huangdi. It's going to be very legalistic. It's going to persecute Confucianists. They thought people were naturally bad. You needed to have a strong government. You needed to punish people to keep them acting correctly. We'll have the Han dynasty. The Han dynasty was militarily and economically powerful. They'll expand into Central Asia. They create paper. They trade along the Silk Road. They'll fight the nomads in China called the Xiaonu, the Chinese Huns, the Asian Huns. And the other dynasty that happened before 1200, other big one, was the Tang dynasty. They're going to introduce the belief system called Neo-Confucianism, which blends Confucianism with Taoism and Buddhism. They're going to reintroduce the Confucian bureaucracy. They'll expand into Korea, Vietnam, Central Asia, and there'll be a tributary empire. A tributary empire is where you might conquer a territory. You don't directly take them over, but you make them pay tribute instead. So the Tang dynasty, they kind of had control over Vietnam and Korea. Those areas weren't like directly annexed by China. They would have to pay tribute to the Chinese emperor. One of the big concepts that happens throughout Chinese history is an idea called the Mandate of Heaven. And this goes along with the dynastic cycle. In the Mandate of Heaven, this was created by the Zhao dynasty. The Zhao dynasty had just overthrown the Shang dynasty. They were two of the oldest dynasties. They're really not that important, but they're important because of the Mandate of Heaven. And the Zhao dynasty was trying to come up with a justification for why they overthrew the Shang. And they came up with the idea of the Mandate of Heaven. And what the Mandate of Heaven is that the right to rule is granted by heaven. It's given to virtuous and strong rulers. Sometimes governments or dynasties will become corrupt and they'll lose the mandate of heaven. When that happens, you'll see the dynastic cycle. The dynasty will start off strong, but then they'll kind of fall apart. And then a new dynasty will be given the mandate. Some of the signs you've lost the mandate of heaven: corruption, heavy taxes, peasant rebellions, invasions, civil wars, famines, natural disasters, bad morals, stuff like that. So the Zhao came up with this idea to kind of justify what they did. Here's a little picture of the Mandate of Heaven, of how it works. And this is an image of actually showing the dynastic cycle. You have a new dynasty, bad things start to happen. Eventually, a new dynasty takes their place after they're overthrown. Dynastic cycle, and you should definitely know that. Let's talk about one of the first Chinese philosophies, and this is a philosophy, it's not a religion. It's not interested in the afterlife or whether there is a soul or anything like that. This is called Confucianism. This was created by Confucius. His book, major book that Confucianists follow, are called the Analects. They're the sayings compiled by his disciples, supposedly, that Confucius said. Confucianism was a philosophy that was created during a period in China where there was a lot of civil war going. It was at the very end of the Zhao dynasty, and you just kind of saw society falling apart. There was war for almost like a 300-400 year period. It's called the Warring States period. And Confucius tried to create a conservative philosophy that would support morality, a strong hierarchy, and order. Fundamentally, Confucianism is amoral and ethical in character. They want to restore political and social order. It stresses ritual. The goal of Confucianism is to make people like me, Junzi, which means a superior individual. In Confucianism, they focus on respect. Different groups in society need to respect each other. That will kind of cut down on war. And also on education. Remember, the Confucian bureaucracy comes from Confucianism. The three key concepts in Confucianism are Ren, a sense of humanity. You know, you have a sense of humanity for your fellow humans. I see somebody else like they're drowning in a pool. I'm not going to just leave them there. Li, a sense of propriety. I'm at church, so I'm not going to wear a wife beater. I have a sense of propriety. And Xiao, a sense of filial piety. Respect for your parents, respect for your elders. Cultivating these things will make you Junzi. And in Confucianism, in their social hierarchy, it really comes down to the 5 relationships about respect. The subject respects the ruler. The son respects the father. The younger brother respects the older brother. The wife respects the husband, and the friend respects the friend. In Confucianism, there will be a new social class created. Confucianism values education, and they create the Confucian bureaucracy, where you have to take a test to join the government. These people that join the government after taking a test are going to have a very strong, high social role in China. They're going to be right below, around the nobles. A lot of them will actually intermarry with the nobles, and they are called the scholar gentry. The next philosophy that was created in China was called legalism. Legalism is a doctrine of statecraft. It's amoral. It's not concerned with morality, what's right or wrong. It's very practical. Try to be very efficient. It's going to be used by the Qin dynasty. In legalism, they think people are naturally bad, so you need to have strong punishments, harsh laws to keep people in line. Legalism focuses on agriculture and military. They discourage commerce. They discourage education. You don't want people knowing too much. They discourage the arts. People don't need to waste their time on that. The way that legalism treats people, they focus on trying to harness people's self-interest for the needs of the states. Harsh penalties, even for minor infractions, to keep people in line. I see somebody speaking bad against the Qin dynasty, we cut out their tongue. One of the things the Qin dynasty actually did do was when Confucianists spoke out against it, they would bury them underneath the Great Wall of China. So legalism, a little strict, not that fun. The next one is Taoism. Unlike Confucianism and legalism, Taoism is a religion. Taoism believes they prefer to focus on reflection and introspection, while Confucianism is all about joining the government and contributing to society. Taoism is about you should withdraw from the world, you should focus in on your inner harmony, you should contemplate the principles of nature, like, go out to the woods and look at how a river, the current of the river, and why that actually happens. The founder of Taoism was Lao Tzu. He wrote the Tao Te Ching. In Taoism, you have Tao, the way of nature, the way of the cosmos. Taoism focuses on a lot of contradictions, the opposites and balance, but they were complementary. Even though they're opposites, they do balance each other out. The big symbol for Taoism is yin-yang. They focus on ideas like water is passive yielding, it does nothing, but it also accomplishes everything. One of the big social ideas of Taoism is the doctrine of Wu Wei. They thought that you should withdraw from the worldly affairs, you should not be involved in the government, called for simple, unpretentious lifestyles, live in harmony with nature. This is going to kind of serve as a counterbalance to Confucian activism, and the Confucianists will not like the Taoists at all. They are not going to like them, because Taoism threatens a lot of the ideas of Confucianism. So that's all. These different philosophies and religions will all kind of oppose each other a little bit, but they're all going to be very big in China, especially Confucianism, which is going to exist all the way till the 1900s and dominate Chinese ideology. Well, that's all I got for you for today, kiddos. Until next time, deuces, deuces, deuces.